In the previous video, we discussed how to configure a Scrum board. Let us now discuss how to configure a Kanban board. In this video, we are going to take a look at creating a Kanban board in JIRA software, when to use Kanban board, and various Kanban board configurations. Right now, I'm logged into my JIRA instance, and if I go to the project options on top, I have the option to create a new project. And this time, when I create a new project, I have the option to create a Kanban software development project using the template. But for this particular exercise, I want to create a new project with some sample data. So click on the link below, create sample data, and choose Kanban software development. And click on the next button. And this time, you need to give your project a name. So in case you're working on a project for developing mobile apps, just like the previous example, we will be using the Kanban, and we'll see how the Kanban board behaves differently if you compare it with a Scrum board. So let us say if I want to manage my iOS development project in JIRA. So I'll type in my project name and my project key. And I'm the project lead for this particular project. Click on the submit button. So this is my Kanban project with a Kanban board which is currently being displayed. And if I expand my sidebar on the left hand side, I can notice that the first option I have is a Kanban board. So the main difference if you compare your Kanban board with your Scrum board is the missing backlog tab from your sidebar, because when you work on a Kanban based project, you don't really plan the activities. And a typical example of your Kanban project would be your support or maybe your help desk, where you just need to do the activities as they come. You don't really need to plan your activities. So let us take a look at what you can do with your Kanban board. And if I collapse my sidebar and take a look at my current Kanban board, I can see that right now I have many columns like backlog selected for development. I have a column called as in progress, and finally I have a done column. So what you need to do, you need to first configure and map your current workflow statuses to the right column in the Kanban board. So if I click on the board and go to the configure option, I can see here that most of the configurations, if you compare your Kanban board with Scrum, they are same. So you still have the same option to define the filter, and then you also have a similar option to configure the column. So if I go to the column section here, you have a similar interface where you can actually take a look at what all configurations you can do and what all columns you can configure. So right now in the current configuration of my Kanban board, I have these 4 columns: backlog, selected for development, in progress, and done. And if you want to add a new column, you can do it by simply clicking on the add column button on top right corner. But you also have the option here to define a column constraint, which is one of the unique features in a typical Kanban based approach. You want to have a visibility of the amount of work that you're doing, and you want to impose this limit on the number of tickets that you want to have in a specific column. So for example, if you think that you cannot really have more than 4 items in the backlog column, so you can simply modify this particular option here that says maximum constraint for this column and enter a number like 4. So what will happen now, whenever you take a look at your current Kanban board and you have more than 4 issues in the backlog column, the color of your column will be changed to red. And it is like a visual indication that you want to give to your team members that you are currently doing more work than you're supposed to do. Or maybe it is an indication that you are not really progressing with the right speed. So if I go back to my board, I can see here that I already have one constraint on the in progress column, and I also have one constraint on the backlog column, and currently it says maximum constraints 4. If I add a new item, let us say to the backlog again, let us see what happens. If I drag my issue from my selected for development column to my backlog column, you can notice that on top there is one indication using a red color, and this indication is letting me know that I cannot really have more than 5 issues in the same column. And you can have this constraint. It is also known as work in progress limit on any column that you want. And this is one of the unique features in our Kanban board. And if you take a look at the other features that you have in your Kanban board, when you go to the configure option, you will notice that you still have the option to configure a swim lane, which could be based on any query that you want to define. It can be based on the stories, it can be based on the assignee name, or it can be based on the project name itself if you are using one Kanban board for multiple projects. You do have the option to configure a similar quick filter. You have a similar option to create a color or use a different color for those cards. So let us say you want to have a color based on the issue type. So you can just select the issue type from the list, and you will be presented with this list where you have different options to choose the color. You also have a similar option to use a card layout. Let us say if you want to include more fields in your Kanban board cards, so you can actually use this feature. Let us say you want to display the issue type, or maybe the due date, or maybe you want to display the component. So you have a lot of options to choose from, and you can add more fields if required. And just like your Scrum board, you have the option to define the working days, and the issue detail view will let you add more fields in the detail view of your issue. So if you go back to your board and if you click on any of these cards, you will notice that the behavior of the issue detail view is pretty much similar to your Scrum board. And the main difference here is that you don't really have the planning board where you will have the backlog or where you will be working on the sprints. And when you are working on a Kanban board, you will need to also release your items from the done column. So there is a link here that says release. And if you click on this particular link on top, you have the option to clear your done column, and it can be done on a weekly basis, or it can be done on a monthly basis, or maybe you want to attach these issues to a specific version. But let us say you want to use a week number, let us say week 11, and you want to let everyone know that this week I did these many activities. So as part of this particular release, which is week number 11, you are saying that you will be releasing 3 issues. And if you click on the release button, these issues will be released, and the done column is now again empty. And you can now start the work again, maybe in your week 12. In the next video, we will take a look at JIRA software reports.